The light's green this time.
Okay. So we've been having some discussions about the expectations that we have as Christians and how maybe sometimes we've gotten off on those expectations and we think that maybe just sort of because we're Christians, this should work out and that should work out, and yet we still find ourselves struggling. And so we kicked it off. Well, the first night we botched a lesson on guilt.
Yes, we did.
And then we tried to do a little better, and there we go. And we talked about marriage is struggling and emphasized connection and maintaining connection. It's kind of the nuts and bolts of that cleaving part.
Yes.
And then tonight, we're going to do the unthinkable, right? And talk about not parenting per se, but that's kind of where it goes.
If
and you're not supposed to do that.
We're going to make you mad.
You're not supposed to do that. With the question, I'm a Christian. This is a Christian family, Christian couple. We raised our kids in the church. Why are my children unfaithful?
Right.
And of course, there's not one answer.
No.
So we're going to run through a couple of things, but there's something in particular that we want to focus on tonight, and that is the culture and society in which this is currently happening.
This
right?
is one of those discussions to where, yes, we know Proverbs 22:6. We're well aware of that. But there are things going on that aren't being talked about in worship, not being talked about in Bible class, and not being talked about amongst church members, and so we want to bring it out.
Well, Proverbs 22:6 says that if you train up a child in the way that he should go, when he's old, he won't depart from it.
Right.
And yet what we're talking about is children departing.
That's right.
And so I think sometimes we can struggle with passages like that seem to be making us a promise, and then we seem to be let down. But one of the things that I think is important is when you think about the Proverbs and you think about wisdom literature, these are general principles of wisdom, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you are much better off training your child up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. There's this is the way you want to do it, regardless of how it ends up. And I heard somebody say, if you read the book of Ecclesiastes, which is written by the same author,
yes,
and which carries a different tone, and if you read the two side by side, you go, wait a minute.
Yes.
This is a little strange. And so the way I heard it described is Proverbs is like the wisdom of a father to his son. But then Ecclesiastes is like granddad coming along and going, yeah, he's right. That's the way you do it, and that's the way you should practice it. But you also need to understand that it doesn't always work out. But you need to find a way to appreciate that life is a gift from God. Do it this way regardless of how it works out in the here and now.
And our key word is...
Well, I mean, that's kind of... my kids will tell you that my favorite phrase is, I'm a grown man. So...
I wish I had a dime for every time you said that.
So they'll say, Dad doesn't XYZ, or why doesn't Dad? And I mean, well, because I'm a grown man, I can do what I want. But you can't. When you grow up, then you can. But that's the first thing I want to say about this is our job as parents is to bring our children to adulthood. And then we maintain relationship, but a relationship, the nature of that relationship changes. And your adult child is an adult, not a child. They're your child, but they're not a child anymore. And there is a point at which all of us have to make a choice for ourselves. Right? And I know that's hard for us to swallow. We, like God, don't want anyone to be lost.
That's right.
But ultimately, every person has to stand before God themselves and give an account. And I think that's the place to start
Okay.
with this discussion.
When we became adults, we made choices. When our children do the same, they're going to make deliberate choices. I don't think anybody here is going to say that they always made the right choice. I don't think anybody here is going to say, even though they were deliberate and they had all the information in front of them that they wanted when they made a choice, that they made it correctly. And so when clients come in and families come in, Gary would tell you, I tend to come into the office and I bark because it's so difficult to get everybody on the same page. And so we're hoping that this helps us help families get on the same page, because those choices are the same that we made.
So interestingly, there's some what seem to be contradictory things happening in our society. There is this trend, I don't know if you've heard anything about it, but there's this trend of young men in particular moving toward religion. A lot of them are going toward Catholicism and more real traditional kind of things. They're not going, in other words, they're not going to the community church, right? So they're looking for something. But at the same time, there is just as much of a trend of young people in Christendom that are abandoning the faith they grew up in. So you're like, what is happening? Well, a part of that is that those young men that are going to Catholicism or pursuing orthodoxy or something like that are young men that grew up in secular homes. And secularism has left them without any meaning and purpose. And that does not work for young men. Young men do not do well without meaning and purpose. And so they are looking for it. They're turning toward something else. They grew up in secular households, and secular just means not necessarily that they were atheist or agnostic, but just sort of like, well, just the typical, American household and just whatever. They're playing sports, they're, all the normal things, but it's real secular. And, well, to me, and this is a different discussion, but to me, it automatically makes me go, well, maybe some of us approached evangelism wrong. because these young men that are coming out of secularism are going toward Catholicism and orthodoxy. I'm using that word the way that the Christian world uses it. They're not going to the community churches because you secularized the church, and they're leaving secularism. They're not going to go to a religious institution that has become as secular as it can be. And yet, the approach that so many have had is we've got to become more entertaining, we've got to become more like the world, and that will draw them. But if you only offer them what the secular world has already offered them, and that's what they're wanting to leave because they don't find any meaning and purpose, and that explains why they're going in that direction. But that's weird that you've got young men growing up in secularism turning to religion, and then you've got people growing up in religion that are abandoning it.
Yeah, going the other way.
So they're like passing each other on the way in and on the way out.
They're finding a way to seek grandiose structure. Secular homes are more times than not without structure, without guidelines. And so they're seeking that. And as they're seeking that, the most grandiose structure attracts them.
Well, and so when you think about, let's think about a young adult who leaves the church,
Okay?
right? So obviously we've said they're an adult, they make decisions, but one of the things that happens is they can just drift. Right? And so they made a series of choices not to abandon their faith, not to leave the church, but they just sort of made a series of choices, and the next thing you know, they are away from. And so a lot of our young people they'll graduate high school and they'll go off to college. Maybe they don't get connected to a college ministry. Maybe they don't remain real connected to their family, and then they meet someone, and then the next thing you know, like they're not attending church regularly. Or really, if you think about it, it's just hard once you've grown up here in this congregation to go as a young person and get connected to another congregation. It's hard as an adult to do that. I've done it as an adult, and it's hard to do. But also, as I contemplate that, I think about the way we've traditionally done ministry.
Mm-hmm.
Too, is we have a youth ministry, and we really, really get our kids connected as a youth group. And then they graduate, and then what? Now they're just supposed to be integrated into this group. Well, maybe they should have been more integrated into the group all along, rather than just being integrated into this smaller group. And so it makes perfect sense that many of them would drift, because now this is all that has held them together, and then that breaks up, and there isn't anything to hold them together. And so maybe more of a mentorship process and connecting the generations would be more productive in a long-term kind of strategy.
Are we ready for the $15 word?
I'm not paying you anything, but you can say whatever you want.
This is where disaffiliation comes from. Think about that word. What are you affiliated with? How are you affiliated in your identity? This is when disaffiliation occurs. We don't like to think about it. 18, 19 years old, they go off to college. They are looking for a different congregation, right? That's where they're going to be in college. They can't come home. Gas is too high. They're too far away, so on and so forth. So as you look into what this affiliation means, I wonder, Gary, what is at our local congregation that they are affiliated with? Is it just the youth group, as you mentioned?
Well, there are other programs that we try to connect them with, and leadership trainings, sure, and things like that. But then again, also, like once you graduate,
where's that connection? There's that word again coming up. You watch the little ones coming in today. I watched the way that they all would look for Jesse as they came in. Even the little ones would give him 5, right? Just simple as that. Just that simple.
Well, I may have set him up as a villain, so they're looking for him.
So now they're hunting him? Okay, yeah. That's pretty good. Let's hunt him. So when you think about what you look at this group, this very large group that East Walker is so wonderfully blessed to have, blending them into the adult world, blending them into, many times we refer to it as the young professionals, right? We refer to that. Well, okay, great. Sometimes we refer to it as college age. What about those that don't go to college? All of a sudden, you have a name and a label that they don't like. It does not recognize them. And so they feel disaffiliated. And you didn't mean to do that. That was not your goal.
And you can easily say, well, by that time, they should be affiliated with Jesus.
Well, I suppose so. Are we going to go back to the truly convicted child of God?
Well, But a part of that is the church is his body.
Right.
So, anyway, not just drifting though.
Okay.
Sometimes the move is a little more deliberate.
Yeah.
Because, and well, there's probably a number of reasons why, but I can think of a handful of young people. This is kind of what sparked my exploration of this. A handful of young people from families that I have admired for a long time.
Okay.
That you would never have ever thought that their kids would go, I guess we'd say, off the deep end as far as they did.
Okay.
Right?
Yes.
Because this is how they grew up, this is how they were taught, this is how, and like, you don't even recognize them anymore. And and so, but one of the things that is common in those examples that I think of is, or one of the questions that comes up is, were they prepared for the world that they were about to enter into, or were they protected from the world that they were about to enter into?
Are you proposing that we challenge 50 years of Bible school curriculum?
Well, I mean, I do like to challenge.
Not to put you on the spot or anything.
I'm just asking if they grow up in a Christian home and they grow up attending Bible class and they can tell you, and these kids can, these examples that I'm thinking of, they know the Bible stories front and back. They know the answers to the test.
Yes.
Right? Whatever test you want to give them, they know the answers. But they have chosen a different lifestyle, a different path, a different way of living. They have chosen to reject those things. And so it does bring to question, were they protected from, or were they prepared to face? I graduate, I go off to college, or I go out into the world, and now I'm confronted with all of these different views, all of these different perspectives, all of these different arguments, all of these different ideas. And it's like when you take your kid into, in the mall they have that candy store that you go in and you just get a bag and you can fill it up with everything and then just pay by the weight. Like that's the overwhelming experience.
Right.
When they go into the workplace, and when they go into college, when they go into just the society that we protected them from.
Okay.
So my question is should the focus be more on preparing than protecting? And I'm not saying I want to just expose my children to everything, but there is no possible way that somehow, having been exposed to nothing, they turn 19 and are prepared to handle all of that stimulus all at one time.
Okay.
It's just not realistic.
You've got my curiosity going.
It's just not realistic. But I think it happens.
Obviously.
I think it happens. But it also brings up something that you just hinted at, I think, which was, are these kids actually leaving? Or are they unconverted in the first place?
That's a hard question to answer. It's a difficult question to talk about. Are they converted, and are they simply trying to separate from mom and dad? Are we trying to be independent, which we want our children to be, right? And we want them to stand on their own two legs. Or is it your faith or theirs?
I guess that's the question. Like, are they abandoning the faith they grew up in, or are they abandoning their faith? Because those are two different things.
Very different discussions.
And so there is a question that rises of their their conversion, because again, being converted to Christ doesn't mean that you can answer all the test questions, right? You have to take that faith and make that yours. And actually, sometimes developmentally, that may be a later thing. I mean, psychologically speaking, we're seeing that adolescent period of forming your own identity shift later and later in life. And so, I'm not saying that the 14-year-old that obeys the gospel at camp isn't truly converted, but I'm saying just because my 14-year-old was baptized doesn't necessarily mean that they were converted. It may be a response to the expectations. It may be an emotional response. And are they developing their faith? And is that what's being left? Or are they just leaving their parents' faith and what they grew up in just kind of out of rebellion and forming my own identity?
So let's summarize one thing right there so we make sure everybody understands what you just said. The trend that we're seeing psychologically is something that I know that you and I have all talked about from one time or the other. When I think about my granny getting married at 14, somebody touches my Addison when she's 14, we got a problem, right? I know that Granny's 14 was not my daddy's 14, was not my 14, was certainly not my Addison's 14. And we can do the same thing with the boys. It's not anything like that.
I'm kind of concerned what that's going to look like.
It's a great point. How far can we go before we find that we have to develop when we're supposed to develop? And who knows exactly when that development is to occur psychologically. We would really like to see that begin like it did at 10, 11, 12. We would really like to see that, but in the way that the world is today, it's going to have to reverse, and perhaps it will when the pendulum swings back the way it came. But that's what's going on today. Does that make sense? All right, good. Now.
Okay, good, because now we get to the heavy stuff.
Now we're getting that. Yeah, now we're going to start doing stuff that's going to make them mad.
All right. So there's another thing that's happening.
Currently, right now.
With these young people that are being more intentional and more deliberate.
Yes.
I'm gonna put up a chart up here. I know you probably can't read it real well.
The phones are coming out. Everybody's zooming in.
I made some copies.
Where are they?
I gave them to Jesse. So we'll see if they make it to you.
Okay. London shrugged his shoulders. He doesn't know where Jesse is.
Yeah, that's all right. But I'm
He's on the prowl.
I'm going to leave that up. I'm going to leave that up for a minute, and I'm going to pull a couple of things together. Okay, so this trend of of young adults leaving the faith that they grew up in isn't just happening in the church; it's happening in Christendom at large. And there's even a name that has been given to it in the past few years. We're behind on recognizing this trend. They use the word deconstruction. All right, and so it's all over TikTok. There are deconstructionists. There are people talking about deconstructing your faith. And some in the Christian world have grabbed a hold of that word, use that word, and use it in a different way than those people intended. All right?
It's more like demolition.
And so at first I did too. Because I've preached a sermon here about creating making your faith resilient.
Yes.
And to do that, you have to know what you believe and why you believe it and what's the evidence for it and so forth. And so I thought that's kind of what deconstructing is, so I'm not opposed to it. But come to find out, on TikTok and with these influencers, they mean something very different by deconstruction than that. They're very much about a very particular process. And a lot of young people are falling prey to this without even recognizing the term deconstruction or what they're doing, but this is the process that they're engaging in. But it's also embedded within a bigger culture of cutoff culture.
Cancel culture.
So one of the things that is happening, if you take religion out of it for just a minute, it's also not very uncommon for young adults to go see a therapist, a bad therapist.
Be clear about that.
Come away from that experience blaming their parents for everything that they don't like about their lives, coming away with terms like, mom was a narcissist.
Oh, yeah.
Using terms like trauma. Now, don't misunderstand. There are some parents that have done a real bang-up job on their children, right?
Yes.
But that's not what this lends itself toward. And so there is already a trend for young adults to blame their parents and to cut off from them. It doesn't have anything to do with religion. It has to do with our society's push for victimhood, our society's push to infantilize everybody, right? Mm-hmm. Not take any responsibility for yourself, not do anything. It very much has that persisting. But what happens then when you throw religion into that mix is you have a young adult who does not distinguish between the religion and what they're blaming their parents for otherwise.
It's all the same because mom and dad manipulated me into where I am.
Yes. So
isn't that fun to be called a manipulator?
So it's the same. It's a process that's happening even in non-religious homes.
Yes.
Right? And what that means is there are more things to take into consideration than just their critique or evaluation of religion, if that makes any sense.
Yes, it's all lumped into one. All of their childhood is lumped into one ball.
So you've got things like bad therapy, you've got therapeutic language being used to talk about things that are toxic, things that are traumatic, this cutoff culture, this victimhood mentality, and all of that becomes feelings focused. See, one of the other things we did, and by we, I mean our profession, where we really botched this up.
Yeah, they're going to love this.
Was we really pushed this trauma-informed and mental health-informed thing, and we had a bunch of healthy, normal kids
that we convinced,
that we forced into you have to identify your feelings all the time.
Yeah.
And then lo and behold, all they could focus on was their feelings.
That's where they got stuck.
And so now, as young adults, they interpret everything by how it makes them feel. And so because you believe that there are people that are going to hell, that does not feel good. So you are extremely toxic. And I need to distance myself from you because it doesn't feel good. And you say, but it's true. Doesn't matter. We are not evaluating things by facts. We are evaluating things by feelings, right? So it doesn't matter how many facts you throw at it. It doesn't feel good. And the only way I know how to regulate my emotions is to cut that out, right? We just went through years of cancel culture, right? That's exactly what this was. I don't like it. It doesn't make me feel good. Get rid of it. It doesn't matter whether it's true or not, because we're not evaluating anything by facts. We're evaluating it only by feelings. How did that happen besides bad therapy? Well, that happened with a societal transition, right? And that's what this chart is about. The traditional perspective, which was in the West, which was driven by Christianity's influence on the world, was that truth was objective. right? It was outside of me. This is what's true. The source of truth was revelation and reason, right? God revealed it. Jesus said, I am the truth. You could also do math and say 2 + 2 is 4, like truth. And the authority was seen as God in the Scriptures. Somewhere along the way, our society shifted to more of a modernism perspective. And Christianity clashed with modernism. And this was when we had these big debates between Christian thought and atheism. Because for the modernist, truth was, yes, it was objective, but it was discoverable through reason and science. And the idea was that if you couldn't test it scientifically and empirically, then it wasn't something for us to even fool with, right? And then the source of knowledge was human reason and empirical science, and the authority was the science. Follow the science, right? Nothing else is important.
Provable science. Empirical science.
Well, and really for a long time, our society has kind of been at tension between those two things.
Yes.
Right?
Agreed.
But then we never would have thought that we would actually kind of come together in opposition to something else.
Right.
But this other way of thinking rose that was postmodernism. Now, when I grew up, the church did a pretty good job of preparing me for modernism because we were good about the AP material, Apologetics Press material. We were good about discussing evolution and how actually this wasn't even science, this was pseudoscience, and the actual science spoke more to creationism. And by the way, you can easily find on YouTube, there are a whole lot of very prominent, very well-known scientists, mathematicians, and so forth that are currently like, look, the theory of evolution we've been touting for so long does not explain any of this. Now, they're not turning to God necessarily, but they're going, this doesn't work. We need a new theory, right? But what happened is postmodernism perspective was truth is subjective, it's constructed. We construct our reality. It's dependent on perspective. The source of knowledge was personal experience, cultural narratives, and the authority was, there's no universal authority, there's only competing narratives, which led us to, this kind of simplifies that. So we sort of went from God says it, so it's true, to reason proves it, science proves it, so it's true, to I experience, therefore it is true for me. And this, in no place is this more evident than in the LGBTQ movement that tacked along to it. Because earlier on in my life, I remember the argument was, well, people are born this way, right? Yeah. And it was an appeal to sort of science to show this.
Which has now been debunked, right?
Debunked. Plenty of studies show that. Well, in fact, the same people making the argument now have debunked it themselves because they're saying that gender is fluid. Well, if gender is fluid, sexuality has to be fluid, so the whole thing goes out the window.
Right.
But nobody called them on any of that. But then we ended up over here with whatever you feel like being is what you are. And who in the world am I to argue with that? Because truth is based on your experience.
Person to person, that's right.
And so if you experience womanhood, Kip, then who am I to say, no, obviously you're a man. And so what happened is the traditional view and the modernist both kind of were like, that's a little too far.
Right.
Like, and so they tipped their hand. And you say, well, what in the world does that have to do with young people leaving the church? Well, honestly, those examples that I can think of, they end up over there almost as LGBTQ activists, because that's where you have to go. If everything is judged by feelings and experience, then you have to accept what they say as their experience.
And oppose organization.
And oppose anything that claims anything about objective truth.
Authority or truth, yes.
Now, the whole thing falls apart, but the whole thing has to fall apart with itself. Because here's what happens. The postmodernist, who is all about feelings and experience, and these kids aren't going to say, well, I'm a postmodernist, all right? But look at what's happening. They're going to come to you, or not come to you, and you're going to talk to them, and they're going to use this language of toxic, and they're going to use this kind of language, and they're going to be all about how it makes them feel, and how it's uncomfortable, and how it's toxic, and you're going to say, that's not true. And here's the evidence. And they're going to look at your evidence, and they're going to say, that makes me feel, and they're going to see your evidence as more evidence to confirm what they feel.
And dismiss you.
See that? I hate that, because I don't care about your feelings anyway from the beginning, okay? And so I hate that, because what I want to do is smack you over the head with as many facts as I've got, and I've got a lot of them.
Yes, you do.
But it doesn't work with them, because they are not evaluating anything in the modern way or in the traditional way. They're evaluating everything through their feelings. So, Kip, how do you approach one of these people?
Don't y'all love how he dumped that on me? Number one, you ready? You're going to love this. I know it. It's okay. You cannot be rigid. Your rigid structure simply validates their feelings. You cannot. You have to lose it. Now, would I dare have said that to my Popeye? No. Would I have dared said that to my dad? No, I'd have found myself picking myself up off the ground, just like you. But you have to lose the rigidity. You have to be able to look at them and understand what we're saying here. These slides. That's the reason Gary wanted to give you that first slide, because it's so very important that we recognize that's their point of view. That's what they're being fed at school. I don't care if it's private school, public school, it doesn't matter. Especially when they go to college, age 18, 19, and 20, those tender young minds, they're away from mom and dad, and that's what they're being told. And as they're being told that, you have to see their point of view, or you're just, as Gary just said, you're confirming their position with you all the way. So, number one, lose the rigidity. Number two, you have to give them a soft place to land. If you've ever been to me for therapy, you're going to hear that phrase, because that is one of the most important things in going through these generational times. And we've talked about that a couple of years ago, of how that there was the greatest generation, and there's the boomers, and then there's the X, that's me, the millennials that he argues he's not, but he is. And then there's the Z, and then now there's A, okay? And so there has to be movement through those. That's not what this is, but that comes into play here. And as we deal with our children that are in these groups right here tonight, we have to be able to see that we have to give them a very soft place to land. And, you ready? Dads, I'm going to talk to you first. You have to give them freedom of expression. Well, I got a lot of grins, Gary.
I don't like it.
Well, if you don't like it, I'm really in trouble. Can you imagine your 8-year-old? I didn't say 18. Your 8-year-old coming back to you with some of this. And we would call it, I would call it popping off, right? Okay? When we were that age and we popped off to Dad, we found ourselves picking ourselves up off the floor. okay, or a belt, whichever one we want. So as you look at this, they have to be allowed to express themselves freely, and you have to give them a soft place to land. In that, how do I give them a soft place to land? I want you to think about this in terms of the way that question and answer sessions. Quit smiling at me over there. He's loading up is what he's doing. He's loading up for later. Question and answer sessions. Do you like them? Not really.
I love them. Got my facts ready to go.
Because you're going to hammer them with facts, right? And so we've already seen those question and answer sessions. You have to be open. You have to hear where they are. You have to hear what they're saying. And within those question and answer sessions, watch this. You cannot be afraid. Kip, you're crazy. I'm not afraid of my 14-year-old. Yes, you are.
I'm terrified.
I'm terrified.
She's only 12.
There we go. See? Let's be honest with ourselves first. You're scared to death, right? You have to let them speak to you about what's inside their thought processes, because they are critiquing the faith that you are showing them.
And the world is teaching them to critique it by how it makes them feel.
By how it makes them feel. And so that's one thing you heard me say a minute ago. It's technically called deconstruction. And yes, it is bad therapy, because there are organizations in certain states that start with the letter A that are, as an organization, trying to shove this down our throats as therapists. It's not deconstruction. They're not trying to deconstruct their faith and let them build their own. They're wanting to demolish. It's demolition. They want to shove that out of the next generation, and they're succeeding.
But when you talk about a soft place to land, what you're talking about is that I can't just jump to correcting. I can't just jump to, well, that's wrong, and here's why. I have to, with curiosity, explore what you're talking about, what you're saying, why you feel this way, why, right? Because that's what I have to address, not the just straight up.
Not the rigid facts.
Because it's about processing. They're not in a place to process those facts the way you're feeding them.
The way we did, that's right.
And so there has to be a connecting to the emotions to pull them from that.
I hope they heard your tone.
To the facts.
Yes. So I want to say this.
In other words, you can't debate them.
Yes.
And I think if you look at any of that on social media, you see how a debate doesn't work. It just devolves into, you're toxic and why, that's what happens.
Debate used to work with modernism. It used to work with those millennials. The younger millennials and all of the Zs will look at you like you're a Martian. It's not getting in. It's just not. And that's going to confirm what you are. But you said one word that I want to really, really come back to. You said the word curiosities. We know that as we develop, 5-year-olds become self-aware. Okay? 5. They're not 3. Don't listen to the TV. 5. Okay? They become self-aware. At age 8, they become curious. If you quell that curiosity with debate, facts, or rigidity, it never returns until they're 19, when they're out from under you and they're doing parental separation and they're pulling away from you because they're lumping everything that has to do with you in the same ball, and they want to throw it in the depth of the ocean and move on.
Yep. And then you do not have the connection to be able to help them process those questions that they're exploring.
Because you've ignored this. Last thing I'm going to say. Truth is not afraid. Think about this. Truth welcomes debate. If you hang around with us very long, you'll find out we're going to pick a fight with one another. Now, we're going to be in full agreement, okay? Very seldom do we really have a disagreement, very, very seldom. But we're going to pick the other side just to prove the truth to the other. We're going to run down that road as far as the other will let us, because it's not afraid. So you have to allow the curiosities. But, all right, here you go. Now I'm going to talk out of the other side of my mouth. As parents, you're going to allow the curiosity. You're going to not be rigid. You're going to encourage full open expression, but you're going to maintain boundaries. You're still the boss.
That's a tightrope to manage.
It's extremely a tightrope. It's the phrase that postmodernism hates, because I said so. Because I'm a full-grown man.
But I can't use that coupled with shutting down the questions and curiosity.
That's right.
I have to foster both at the same time.
At the same time. Because we are full-grown adults. We can manage that.
I have to regulate.
Yes.
Myself.
I have to keep myself. I have to be regulated and not be so emotionally off-center that they get me away from what I'm trying to accomplish with love, tenderness, firm, but tenderness.
And so when you come to me and talk about how I was toxic, my defensiveness is going to want to go, yeah, you hadn't seen toxic yet.
I can't imagine.
But the proper response is, I'm sorry that you felt that way. Can you help me understand how you felt that way? Or why you felt that way?
And
or
everybody out here is thinking
way?
We're crazy for saying that.
Well, I'm going to get back around to the other.
Oh, okay.
But if I don't go through that door, then
you don't get to make their path.
Just pushes them further and further away.
That's it.
And what you have to understand about the postmodernist thought, which I hinted at this a while ago, we're way out of time.
Yeah, we're over.
Is like part of this is it is not sustainable, right? Because the more that you focus on avoiding everything that makes you feel uncomfortable, the more you are a bare nerve that is unsustainable. So part of what you're doing is you are letting them spiral into, oh, this doesn't work and isn't sustainable.
You mean I have to be patient?
And that's how they come out of postmodernism, by the way.
That's how we allow curiosity to come back to the truth. They're really giving us eyebrows.
Yeah, because they want a snack. So you got 10 minutes for snack instead of 15.
Thank you for your attention.